As mentioned before in a previous video, 2016 and especially 2017 was a landmark year for high and wide movements in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's Saturday, January 28, 2017, and over on the south leg of the Steamtown Y, also known as the Bloom, an empty Schnabel car sits with its caboose waiting to be taken down to the Norfolk Southern Taylor Yard. The first daylight train of the day is the K8N, a Taylor to Binghamton, New York weekend extra freight that is usually made up entirely of containers. This train has 36 individual buckets and came down the line at 07:47 a.m. The leader of today's intermodal manifest is the -944 CW number 9800. The 9800 was built in March of 2003 and placed in service on March 21st, 2003, and was finally painted into the horsehead paint scheme that you see here before you on September 10, 2003, which means that it was probably part of the Grey Ghost fleet of the early 2000s. The reason that I point these things out is because we've seen this 9800 locomotive before. It was on New Year's Day when I said this. This is the Norfolk Southern Train 11R, an East Deerfield, Massachusetts to Spencer, North Carolina train. In a couple of years, 2018 to be exact, the second unit, that -944 CW number 9800, would lead a unit sand train that came off of the BNSF. This entire sand train went directly into Steamtown, one of the first, if not the first, to do so. This train was the talk of the railfan community and had every rail buff in the area, including myself, chasing it up the line. On a side note, I have to issue a correction on what I said in that New Year's Day video. That unit sand train 68Z did not come to town in 2018. It was in 2017. My bad. And as for the second unit, an ex-Conrail SD40-2, these engines are easily identifiable on Norfolk Southern by their flexi-coil trucks, low-mounted ditch lights, and cab signal boxes next to the nose. Prior to 2020, most Sunbury Line traffic through town came through in the mornings and early afternoon. In lockstep with that tradition, Train 37T comes up and around the S-curve of the Steamtown Y with a snazzy-looking locomotive lineup and 134 cars and buckets in tow. Ever since Norfolk Southern purchased the D&H South lines in 2015, Train 37T had been my favorite, as well as the most problematic train over the line. The daily dramas that went on with 37T over the years seemed to be never-ending. Engine problems, marker problems, crew doesn't have enough time to get the train into Binghamton, and the most recurring issue, the train's too heavy to make the grade. And that's saying a lot when you consider that the 37T that we saw here in Scranton is not the 37T that leaves Allentown Yard. Lest we not forget that during the 37T's time over the line, they made a substantial set-off of cars on Penobscot Mountain for the Reading and Northern in Penobscot Yard. In fact, I once heard an engineer complaining to dispatch over the radio that Allentown wanted him to leave with more than 11,000 feet of train. 37T was the big boy on the Sunbury, with only the 11Z occasionally rivaling its length. Because of this, stalls were frequent, as you'll see as we progress in this time capsule series. Today is no exception, and although this isn't the first calamity of this train symbol, you're witnessing history in the making, as this was the first in a series of debacles involving the 37T train in 2017 that would change the way that trains moved over the line, all the way up to 2020 and PSR. As you can see for yourself, today's train is losing momentum fast, and although this train would eventually make it to the top, it did so just barely, delaying the southbound train 11Z that's currently waiting for him in Dalton. Two other interesting facets of this train are the flat cars loaded with sheet steel and the gondola cars loaded with steel I-beams. These cars would be transferred to the 14R after the 37T was abolished. The flat cars loaded with sheet steel would become part of tonight's or tomorrow's Train 10A to Northumberland, Pennsylvania. From there, they'll become part of the Lycoming Valley's LVRR-1 turn job between Norrie and Newberry Yard near Williamsport, I think. Once in Newberry, they'll be switched out at the High Steel Structures plant located on the grounds there. We've seen the switching operation in action in a past video, and we'll see it again in a future video. After a lengthy wait, the Train 11Z makes its way down the line with an EMD GE power combo running elephant style and a friendly, horn-happy-go-lucky crew. There's a few pieces of rolling stock that you should take note of in this train. The first is the Guilford boxcar and the freshly painted Saratoga North Creek right behind it. We'll be talking about those in an upcoming video. The second is the Lycoming Valley Railroad gondola car, which loaded off of, you guessed it, the LVRR-1 train that we just talked about. The third is an extremely rare sight, an NS scale test car. These cars are used to calibrate and confirm that car weighing scales are performing properly. These cars are an extremely rare sight, and I've only ever caught 2 of these in my lifetime. Three years later in 2020, Train 37T has been abolished. PSR is the law of the railroad, and much of 37T's manifest has been transferred over to the 14R, along with many of its problems. Today, we witnessed the CFG Heritage Unit leading the assault up the grade with an EMD GP40-2 dead in tow. The conductor on this train told me that they were within only a few tons of the max tonnage that they could pull with the power that they had on today's train. And it shows. And just like the 37T that we saw 2 trains earlier, by the time this manifest marker makes it past our location, well, you'll see for yourself. And one last thing to note, those long cuts of gondola cars in this train are also carryovers from the 37T.